For 100 years, the kingdom told a story. It was a story of a princess, cursed and beautiful, laid to rest in a crystal palace, waiting for a miracle. They called her Aurora, the sleeping princess, a silent legend entombed in glass. They told the story to their children, a sad lullaby of loss and hope. But the story they told was wrong. Princess Aurora did not sleep. She worked. Each night, as the last bell tolled and the waking world surrendered to shadow, her spirit would rise. A whisper of self, leaving her still body behind. She crossed a veil unseen by any mortal eye and entered the dream realm. It wasn't a prison. It was a sanctuary she had built. A sprawling golden city suspended in the quiet dark, a haven for the souls of her people. In this realm, grief was a weight that could be set down. Here, the weary found rest, the broken found solace, and the lost remembered who they were before sorrow stole their names. This city wasn't built from stone or steel. Its towers were woven from the soft blush of sunset clouds. Its streets were paved with liquid starlight, flowing like gentle rivers underfoot. Bridges arched high above, spun from half-forgotten lullabies and the quiet strength of prayers. The doors didn't have locks. They opened only to an honest heart. Fountains didn't spill water. They flowed with shared memories, shimmering and warm to the touch. And Aurora, she was its architect. She moved through this impossible city wearing a gown spun from the very essence of her people. Each thread was a memory, given freely in their sleep. A child's unfiltered laughter, a widow's silent tear, a soldier's flicker of hope, a lover's timeless vow. She was not a sleeping princess. She was a living anchor, a constant, silent guardian. Every night was a new creation. With the grace of a master artist, she tended to her city of souls. Where sorrow grew heavy and threatened to cast long shadows, she would expand the districts, weaving in more light and space. Where a family's grief had worn holes in the walls of their dream home, she would mend the cracks with threads of shared comfort. She could sing entire buildings into existence, her voice a celestial instrument shaping light and emotion into form. She existed in a state of perpetual twilight, never sleeping deeply enough to forget her purpose, never waking enough to abandon it. She believed she could endure this beautiful burden forever. She was wrong about that too. It began subtly. A wrongness at the edges of her perfect world. A golden tower, once pristine, now seemed to drip with a black, viscous ink. A street of starlight, once a flowing river of light, now showed cracks, spider webbing into abyssal shadow. Something was rotting her creation from the fringes. A rival presence had arrived. It did not build. It did not create. It only corrupted. They would come to know it as the Nightmare Architect. This entity was a parasite, feeding on the unresolved pain her realm was meant to heal. It found the fissures in a person's spirit and twisted them. Dreams that were once havens of peace became terrifying loops of fear and regret. Her people who had found such deep rest in her city began to wake up screaming, their bodies unrested, their spirits hollowed out. The Nightmare Architect's influence spread like a disease, turning her sanctuary into a labyrinth of terror. And then it found the heart of the realm. It found her? A voice, ancient and cold, slithered into her consciousness, a poison whispered directly to her soul. It knew her secret. It knew she was the anchor, the linchpin holding this entire reality together. The voice whispered the most terrifying words she had ever heard. Wake up! The stakes became terrifyingly clear. Aurora learned the impossible truth of her existence. The dream realm, this entire universe of healing and light, existed only because she did not. Her slumber was its foundation. If she woke up, if she answered that call and returned to her body, the dream city would simply vanish. Every tower, every street, every soul would be cast out, unprotected, into the raw, chaotic void of sleep. But if she stayed, if she remained the architect, the nightmare would continue its feast. It would consume her city from the inside out, twisting every beautiful memory, turning her dream homes into prisons of fear. Her people would be trapped not in healing, but in eternal torment. There was no victory without an impossible loss. With this terrible knowledge weighing on her, Aurora walked through her city one last time. It was a pilgrimage and a farewell. She ran her fingers along the walls she had literally sung into being, feeling the echoes of her own voice. She watched children dreaming of futures they couldn't yet imagine, their small souls playing in fields of pure joy she had designed just for them. In a quiet square, bathed in the glow of a memory fountain, she saw them. Her parents, their spirits, just as she remembered them, their faces etched with a love that transcended even death. They didn't see an architect, they saw their daughter. They pleaded with her, their spectral hands reaching. "Live, Aurora. Just live." And in that moment, the cruelest truth of all crashed down upon her. She had built a perfect world, a flawless paradise, a haven for every soul in her kingdom, everyone except herself. She was the eternal builder, but she could never be a resident. She was the guardian of dreams, but she was not allowed to have her own. The choice was made. The nightmare architect advanced, its shadowy form blotting out the golden light, its presence a chilling void. But Aurora no longer saw it as a threat. She saw it as a catalyst. She stood in the very heart of her city, the place where all the threads of memory and emotion converged. To wake, she had to do the impossible. She had to unmake her own masterpiece. She reached for the hem of her gown, the beautiful tapestry of her people's lives. With a deep breath, she began to unweave it. A thread of laughter unspooled, dissolving into motes of light. A thread of grief untangled, returning to the ether as a soft sigh. She was pulling apart the very memories that gave the city its form, letting go of the purpose that had defined her for a century. As the nightmare lunged, she spoke her final decree, her voice not as an architect, but as a woman choosing to live. This city was never meant to last, she said, her voice clear and strong, echoing through the dissolving streets. It was meant to heal, and with those words, she let it all go. Gently, lovingly, she collapsed the dream realm, tower by tower, bridge by bridge, turning gold back into light, emotion back into energy. It wasn't a destruction. It was a release. A gasp echoed through the crystal palace. 100 years of silence broken. In the glass sarcophagus, Princess Aurora's eyes fluttered open. She was awake. The kingdom watched, breathless, as their sleeping legends sat up, the morning sun catching in her hair. The dream realm was gone. But as her people woke that morning, something was different. They felt peaceful. For the first time in a century, they had slept a true, deep, and dreamless sleep. They woke rested. They woke whole. They woke unafraid. The healing she had given them had taken root in their own souls. They no longer needed her city. And Aurora, no longer a legend, no longer an architect, stepped out of her glass prison and walked toward the palace doors. She stepped into the morning sun, feeling its warmth on her skin for the first time. She was no longer a dream. She was alive. As she looked up, she smiled. The sky glowed with the same impossible gold as her vanished city. For just a moment, the clouds seemed to form the familiar shapes of towers and spires. And across the kingdom, those who still lingered on the edge of sleep swore they could see faint streaks of starlight, not falling but fading upward. Not lost, just complete. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow for more journeys into the imagination.